Yes, it is. All right, War Room Hockey Podcast, episode 94 this week. We always say it'll be a shorter episode. We always talk an hour and a half after that. But episode 94, a few things to touch on, but we'll jump into the social media platforms and the audio platforms here in just a little bit. Those who've been listening to us know where you can find it, but we will reiterate that here shortly. Episode 94, inching closer to 100. We will probably have episode 100 while you are out of town and while you were not here. So we'll have to.
I'll be there. I'll be there for 100. We'll do that. We'll do that.
Either way, person or Zoom, we'll have to figure out something as special as possible for episode 100.
Let's do that.
Whether it's our favorite goaltender or something like that, but we'll have to figure out something. But we are inching closer to that. So, but episode 94 this week, where do we want to start?
Well, do we want to start, or do we feel the need to start with everybody's favorite social ill and our ignorant response to it? So
our supposed ignorant response to it.
Yes.
My favorite thing from if you listen to the domestic violence bit from Bill Burr, and he always says after he's made his point, "Oh, I'm probably coming off pretty ignorant right about now," and I get that for the crowd and for being down the middle, you kind of have to say that. But if you listen to the bit, there's so much truth to it that there is no ignorance on his part. All due respect to people, we're allowed our own opinions, and we're supposedly, we no longer live in a free society, unfortunately, but we're supposedly allowed free choice and these freedoms that so many men and women have fought and paid the ultimate sacrifice for.
Correct.
That being said, though, fact is fact, and just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that the truth isn't the truth.
Let me say this out of respect for anyone listening. If you don't believe that anyone should have an opinion that maybe they don't want to be vaccinated, or that we shouldn't have to carry passports to go to the grocery store, or that you should be, kind of separated from regular society if you choose not to be vaccinated with something that we don't even know about yet. If that is your opinion, please change the channel. Just save us all the aggravation and go away. We value you as listeners, but we also value your opinion as a human being to say, I believed in getting vaccinated. Theo Fleury came out this week, and Theo Fleury is someone to be admired and respected as a player and as a human being. What his life story has gone through is nothing but, I have nothing but respect for it. It's top level. And if you want to do yourself a favor, read his book. He's awesome. He came out and said he didn't believe that everybody should have to be vaccinated, that you should have to carry a passport to do anything normal, that everybody should be able to make up their own mind. Immediately, Brandon University, who has nothing, they have no skin in the Theo Fleury game, said that was a stain on his legacy now. If you don't toe that line and salute that opinion, then you are just treated as a second-class citizen. So they are now willing to tarnish everything that guy has accomplished on and off the ice, just because he believes in the freedom, the free will, the free everything of choosing to be vaccinated. You can't go to a Toronto Maple Leaf game, you can't go to a major junior game, you can't go to a BCHL game unless you show a vaccine passport. We all know that the vaccine passport will be obsolete before it's even initiated. Nonetheless, this is the way it's going. If you don't agree with
that, though,
everybody wants to cancel it. Do I believe what?
That there will be enough pushback that this thing will be obsolete before it even happens?
I think it'll be obsolete because the virus changes so often and so quickly that they're now talking about the second Delta variant, something or other. Then it's all, panic. So
and what it means to be fully vaccinated too.
Yeah, so you're getting vaccinated for something that they were working on a year ago, and now all of a sudden it's it's something completely new. So why are you getting vaccinated in the first place?
So
I, and to go back to what brought it all along is now you've suffered economically. The league is suffering. The players are suffering. Now you may have guys going to the Olympics, and they've created this side door way to get out of it by, if you cry COVID, they can pull the plug on NHL players going to the Olympics. Regardless of your opinion of whether they should go or should not go,
yep.
here's your way out of everything. You can't get something delivered. You can't go anywhere. You can't fly. You can't do anything in this world now because the COVID excuse is unimpeachable.
Yep.
All I have to do is say COVID and I can get away with anything.
And like we said before we hit record, if that happens, here's the deal, if that happens with the Olympics, because you know how passionate players are about competing in the Olympics,
yes.
And we can debate all day about, do we side with the players, do we side with ownership?
Yep.
The players are passionate about it, but Olympics, to a shortened season, to no fans, to whatever, if you start doing that again, I've got good money right now. I'll say it on recording right now. I got good money says you're looking at a player strike and you're looking at some major uproar. You've already shut down once.
Right.
You've already done that. Players are already living through the flat cap. They're already having to pay, what is it, 10% or whatever back on the loan.
From
right?
last season, correct.
Last season, all that stuff. Players are not going to want to keep losing money. Right, wrong, or indifferent. Whether we can go on and on about the debate about whether William Nylander is overpaid, but at the end of the day, players in general, they're not going to want to keep losing money. They're not going to want to keep having to deal with this. Ownership, I got money, says isn't going to. The league shouldn't want to keep dealing with this on where the revenue is going to come from and the money they're losing because they don't have butts in the seats. So
I agree with you, and you're 100% right. Players, ownership, these are people that have invested their entire lives in what they're doing. And the league is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise now. And hats off to Bettman and Daly and everybody who's built it to what it is, and all the owners, the players that sacrifice, and the people that get them there. Salute to everybody. Full marks to the league for being what it is now. They should not have to lose money. But who is the first one to step up and run and hide under the pillow when somebody tests positive? Who cares? What? And I'm going to try to get through this podcast without swearing because I don't like to do that on here. Who cares if Austin Matthews tested positive for COVID? It's irrelevant. He didn't have it. He didn't get sick. He didn't create a problem. You can't harm a healthy young person with this virus. You can harm people with comorbidities. You can harm people that are overweight, smoke a lot, old age, whatever. There's a lot of demographics that fit into the high risk category. But young, fit professional athletes and teenagers and 20-somethings and 30-somethings that are in great shape, they are not among them. So why the league would continue to collapse under a positive COVID test is their own fault. No. Like nobody is willing to stand up and say, young hockey players are not at risk. If you feel like you're at risk, don't go to a game. If you feel like you don't want to be around people who may or may not be vaccinated, stay home. Lock your door.
Yep. Call
Amazon and have your food delivered or whatever you do. Don't leave your house if you're petrified of this thing. If you want to go out, go. If you don't. If you don't like my opinion, don't invite me over. I'm okay.
Yep.
But I'm okay with your opinion. But this whole thing about just someone tested positive, they're not sick, they're not in hospital, they didn't even know they had it until you tested them. How is that at risk for anyone? So that's my position on it. I'm going to stay that way. you're welcome to your opinion. I really don't care, but everybody wants to punish me for having that opinion.
Yep.
So that's just a shame. And look no further than Theo Fleury or anybody else who's come out and said, I don't really think I'm going to get vaccinated. I don't agree with the mandate. Now, oh my God, they're going to kill everybody. They're trying to kill society. They're trying to murder people because they don't want to get vaccinated. As if getting vaccinated means that you can't get it, or being not vaccinated means that you automatically have it.
Yep.
It's just ignorance. It's being fueled by the politicians and the media, and people are falling for it every morning on the news.
Fear mongering at its best. But so it'll be interesting to see. I guess the long and short of it, to save us from ranting and raving, which is,
It didn't take me long to
it'll
violate
be
that promise.
it'll be interesting to see how it falls into place when it comes, specifically because it started with the topic of the Olympics, but in general with how the season proceeds with these COVID rules that the league has put into place, and how players can be suspended if they're not vaccinated, and all these things, and all that stuff, how that falls into place and how that works, and everything. So it'll be to save time. It'll be, the long and short of it is just see how it plays out for what looks to be hopefully an 82 game season.
Yeah, look, I'm all for it. I'm all for it. If players have figured out how to go to the Olympics, ownership has figured out how to insure them, who's going to pay all the bills, who's going to handle the travel and all of the logistical things that have to happen with that shortened season. If everybody's okay with that, I'm all for it. I love the product on the ice. I don't like the ancillary issues with the schedule and with potential injuries and things like that. I think there's some irresponsibility there, but I'm all for the product on the ice. If they go, I'll be watching. I hope they get an 82 game schedule in. I hope they can put fans in the seats in Canada for once. And I hope there is some common sense restored over a period of time. But now we're almost 2 years into it, and it's getting worse instead of better. So I'm not optimistic, but I certainly will be rooting for them to put together a full schedule.
Anyway, enough of that.
Yep.
If you're offended, then turn us off. Plain and simple. Which is what you should be doing anyway. If you're offended by something, don't try and cancel. Just change the channel.
Right.
Zach Parise signed a contract with the Islanders. That was a foregone conclusion when you look at the connection with Lou.
Yep.
So all the more reason. Another depth piece there, who's still capable, who has now reaffirmed how scary the Islanders can be if they want to.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. If
their goaltending is healthy and everything's good, they along with the Flyers, those two teams are my top two in the East. I was
looking at this earlier, and I agree with you. I think we've talked about the Flyers being one of the best teams, at least on paper. Let's see what they can do on the ice. But AV is a great coach. You got to put the Islanders in with them. Out east, I love what Montreal has done, even without Shea Weber. I love where they stand. Colorado in the West is still a favorite, along with, I would say, Dallas.
You think Dallas is there?
I like Dallas. I think they need to lose a goaltender. They need to shed some salary there, but I like them. I think Pittsburgh will be a sleeper.
Dallas has some issues though. With kind of this up and down nature of they're a favorite in the West, and then all of a sudden they don't even make the playoffs, and then
there has to be some consistency. Now they had a lot of injury trouble last year, but they still are very deep and very skilled up front. They're large and mobile on defense, and they are 3 deep in goal now. And they've got a little of everything in the Tampa model. They've got big, strong guys up front like Ben and Sagan, and if he's healthy, a guy like Hintz and Radulov. They've got experience in Pavelski. Uh, they picked up Glendenning, who's going to be a big piece for them, along with Robertson and Como. They're going to be, and they are so big and strong and mobile on defense. Adding Suter is a big deal, and they're three deep in goal. All they have to do is put that together. That's just a good team, and I think they absolutely will tell you that they underachieved in a big way last year, but they
Do you
should
have them? Do
compete.
you have them competing in the Central?
I absolutely do. I
Because at least
absolutely do.
compared to, because at
I
least
like the
compared to the
Winnipeg Jets
Pacific,
too.
at least compared to the Pacific, the Central is still your tough division in the West, and
Yeah,
you have to at least assume until proven otherwise that Colorado
tops.
is your one of, if not the top team in the Central. And
Absolutely.
you have to assume that based on some moves they've made this offseason, that Winnipeg is going to be at least in the top 3 or 4 in that
Sure.
division and
Sure.
everything. Uh,
When
so you see Dallas as one up there with Colorado and Winnipeg then.
certainly do. I certainly do. Now they could have a couple key injuries and underachieve again, but I think Jim Nill has shored up some holes there and made things a little bit easier for their top six. And they are, if they don't compete for a cup, if they don't go 2 or 3 rounds into it, I think there's going to be a lot of disappointment there. They are built that well. In the West, they have to go with Colorado and Winnipeg. Um,
What about speaking of the Central and the West? Foregone conclusion based on some moves they've made that, and now that they're in the Central, that Arizona will probably finish last in that division.
there's, as we talked about before we started, I think you can throw out half dozen teams, and Arizona is certainly one of them. I would love to have made a trade 2 years ago for their top pick this year. Them, Detroit, uh, Buffalo. There are teams that have not done. When I say not done getting bad yet, I think there are a handful. There are going to be some real surprises in the middle part of the league. A bunch of teams that you're not used to seeing take major slides, like a San Jose or a Nashville. Maybe a couple of teams that you haven't seen really compete hard in the last couple of years, like say
New
the
Jersey,
Rangers.
New
Somebody
Jersey
like,
could compete.
sorry.
New Jersey could compete
Yeah,
if they put the
they've
pieces together.
certainly shown some willingness to make that team better. I think New Jersey is going to be somebody at the end of the season that will have gone from horrible to mediocre, but it's a step. They're just not. They don't have it up front. They don't have the grit. They don't have the combination of guys that can bang and score.
What direction does Minnesota take? Because they were to, if we're talking about directions that teams are going to take. Last year, I remember specifically our conversation about where Minnesota sat, and it being a surprise as the year progressed that they were. And yeah, it was new division alignments because of shortened year, but they were um, surprising to me anyway that consistently throughout the year they were a hard team to play against, and they were right there competing for a playoff spot and really pushing and showing that they belonged. And so the question is, does that continue? And as a result, do they compete with the likes of Winnipeg and Colorado in the Central? And
Short answer: no. They can't do that. I have a prediction, and I really hope I'm wrong, because I don't know the guy, and I have no axe to grind with him. But so much of what they do, they are so average in every area, except for Kaprizov, who had a banner year, and good for him. He played well all year. He's very consistent. As he goes, so goes this team. Now, a couple of different things can happen here. He could still end up in the KHL. He could get his $10 million payday in Minnesota and turn into Kostitsin. Like that potential is still there for him. there are some guys that like Radulov and Kovalchuk and the guys like that, that over the years, the Russians just maybe, I don't know if they don't know how to handle success. You see Alex Ovechkin still playing his heart out as he does after this many years, but
In respect to Radulov,
he's an exception.
Respect to Radulov too, who's kind of reignited that passion within himself
Yeah,
since the debacle in Montreal and all that stuff, to find himself in Dallas and find that passion and that ability to produce and compete. So
they are
it's
very,
not all of them, but it is right, wrong, or different. It is a Russian factor, unlike other countries who just don't deal with that same thing. But
it's a real thing. They're Minnesota, to wrap them up. They're very average up front, save for Kaprizov. If he has another 40 goal type year, they'll compete for a playoff spot. But they're I would say they're maybe C plus on defense on their best day. They're probably pretty good in goal. Kakkonen and Cam Talbot, pretty good in goal. But as for being more than just a squeeze into the bottom end of the playoffs, that's probably the best they can hope for.
now that while we talk about it, I won't say it's an elephant in the room, but the interesting topic of Chicago. Chicago adding Fleury, potentially getting Taves back in the lineup, adding Seth Jones, a number of moves like that. On paper, they look like a competitive team.
They should be competitive if they stay healthy. If their off ice issues don't cloud their season, which they certainly can affect what happens on the ice. They've got, obviously, Pat Kane never takes a night off. DeBrincat and Strome have found a home. Kubalik is a great young player. If Taves is healthy, that helps. They are not, even with Seth Jones, beyond that, they are pretty mediocre on defense. Fleury, sure, it helps them in goal for sure, but that's another team that's probably a coin toss to get into the bottom end of the playoffs, along with a team like Minnesota or Nashville. There's going to be a lot of that, as there should be. It creates good theater at the end of the year when teams are within do you get a tie or a 2-point win to make the playoffs or not in April? So that's kind of what makes this league go around, and I'm all for it. But there's a bunch of teams in that middle pack where you would throw Edmonton, Calgary, Washington, Vegas, even Boston.
Middle pack is in
St. Louis.
Middle pack is in,
as in teams that
coin flip on which way they'll go.
Exactly, and they're maybe because of depth issues, maybe because of goaltending issues. There's a lot of teams that could really get hot and make a run the way Minnesota tried to do last year, and good on them for that. They could have a little bit of an injury bug, get a cold goaltender, and have be 8 games under 500. Before I forget, there are 2 teams that I want to go on record as saying don't necessarily watch for them this year, but in a couple of years, in the 23-24 range season, LA and Ottawa, West and East. I look at not just where a team is today, but in the case of a Chicago or a Minnesota, those are 2 teams, and I won't digress back there, but those are 2 teams that don't have an NHL player in their system that's not already on the roster. And that is really troubling when I look down the road a year or 2, because you don't want to be a 500 team trying to get into the playoffs and at the same time be a win now window, right?
Yep.
But when you look at a team like LA, they could compete for a playoff this year and should. Ottawa out east could certainly come close to competing for a playoff if they stay healthy and develop, but they are just starting to get good. So those are teams that Yeah, they're going to be tough this year to play against, and could surprise a lot of people as as they should. But holy smoke, are you if you've got to play them every night uh, in a year or two? Ouch, they're going to be really really good. So I look at the league in that way pretty much every year. There's teams that they're not going to have a sniff. They might play their lights out, but they're not going to have a chance. There's teams that probably 8 or 10 of them that are legitimate cup contenders and should surprise no one if they win the cup or go to the finals. And then there's a bunch of teams in the middle that are in that coin flip range. And that's a tough place to be, because you don't get high draft picks. A lot of them are against the salary cap already, and you just got guys that are like Washington is probably starting their decline. I would say Vegas is starting theirs. um, Boston Bruins, Florida looks good to me. Edmonton is going to be all right. I like what Ken Holland has done in a very short time there. Columbus, wow, that's a tough place to go. And then there are some questions. And tell me what you think when you first hear these names: Vancouver, New York Rangers, St. Louis. What do you think there? Carolina.
Well, okay, so let's go one by one real quick. Vancouver. To me, they are too good of a team on paper to be struggling the way they are. Now, to me, and it's my opinion, but what that says to me is that there's some bigger issues at play. Whether that's, and we can advocate for Green, their coach,
Yep.
all day, but for the sake of our argument here, there's a bigger issue at play, whether that's consistency, whether that's health, whether that's coaching, whether that's ownership and management, whether that's some toxicity in the room, whatever. There's a bigger issue at play because they are too good of a team on paper. Demko, excuse me, in net.
Yep.
Tyler Myers on the back end, like Tyler Myers and Quinn Hughes and Pedersen and
Travis Hamonic,
Besser
added
and
Brock Besser,
Besser,
Bo Horvat, A.T.
Hamonic,
Miller. They added Connor Garland. This is a team that should be a lot better, especially if Pedersen stays healthy.
Ekman Larson.
Yep.
Now, again, these are preseason type comments, so we'll see how Vancouver falls in what looks to be a weak Pacific Division, right? So who knows? But up to this point, including last season, there's something going on, because they are just too good of a team on paper to flunk out of the playoffs altogether, as in not even make it, and have these question marks of is Pedersen an offer sheet waiting to happen? Is Besser on the move? Is these are too skilled and talented and young of players to have those types of questions around them at this stage. So there is something going on.
This is the year that they either prove themselves on the move or need to undergo some major adjustments, right?
Agreed. This is every team has it. Every team has a pivotal year where they either put it together and they start to trend in the right direction, or you're looking at blowing it up again and retooling and trying to go a different direction to see if that fixes it. But
right.
every team at some point faces that pivotal fork in the road of which direction you're going to go. And Vancouver in 21-22, this upcoming season, this is their pivotal year. What do they do? You are getting to a point where Besser's contract is going to come up. So is Pedersen's. How long does Green stick around as your coach? There's a lot of questions where things need to be pieced together, or you're going to look at some major changes. Colorado's the same way to me. There's only so many years you can get bounced in the second round before something's got to give. And so you've either got to take that step or you're looking at Jared Bednar, you're looking at Sakic, you're looking at, dare I say it, McKinnon or anybody like that on the outs
No.
because so
So it falls
now
on like,
Colorado's different. Colorado's different. They're in a much different, better place competitive wise than Vancouver, but there's still some of those pivotal questions. So, and in regards to some of the other teams that you listed, who was it? Vancouver. Um, who else did you list?
oh, that was a long time ago. I don't remember. Uh,
Vancouver,
Boston, St. Louis,
Boston, St.
New York
Louis,
Rangers.
Boston, St. Louis Rangers. Okay, real quick on Boston. Boston, I think I won't say it's a foregone conclusion. They find a way to be competitive every year, but I think it's getting more and more of a guarantee that they are trending downward. Krejci's already left.
Yep.
Marchand's on the other side of 30, 31. Pasternak is your most skilled future guy, along with maybe McAvoy.
Yeah.
And those two guys are just simply not enough. St. Louis to me could go either direction. They've got big bodies. They just re-up Parayko long term.
Yep.
Binnington.
You got to do something with
Binnington. Say what you will about Binnington and his attitude or whatever else, but when he's on his game, he is a quality goaltender.
Yep.
To me, they are the prime example though of a team that is literally stuck in the middle. They're stuck in the middle on which way they go. They're stuck in the middle on how we describe them, because they've still got a lot of the same pieces that won them the Stanley Cup. They're big bodied, and when they're healthy and playing well, they can scare you. Okay. But at the same time, you're looking at flat salary cap, these questions. They got swept last year. Schwartz is gone. Tarasenko is not happy and wants out. Binnington looked more human than he has. Health concerns, this salary cap, that. They real quicker than I think any of us want to admit, because we have no axe to grind necessarily with the Blues.
Oh.
But quicker than any of us really want to admit, they could be trending to a rebuild.
Look at, I want to stop you in the middle of all these teams that could go either direction, and teams that could be a year from now, they could be trying to retool and blow them up, whatever you want to call it, or they could be, in the conference final. So much of this depends on the development of individual players. So in the case of Vancouver, does Quinn Hughes take the step to become Cale Makar? Does Jordan Kyrou in St. Louis, does he become Gabe Landeskog? Do these guys, look what Tom Shabbat did in Ottawa, a guy like Makar in Colorado. Does these guys that you're waiting on to change your game, does Cole Caulfield become DeBrincat? Turn into a 35, 40 goal scorer. Those players are you look at 3 or 4 really key players that are young guys that are either going to develop into stars and $7 or $8 million hits, or you're going to be asking yourself in 2 or 3 years, whatever happened to that guy? He had so much potential as a 20-year-old. I haven't heard his name called where'd he go? They just vanish. So when you look at the fate of the team, the fate of the coaching staff, the fate of the fan base, so much of it rests on whether this league minimum guy on his entry-level deal becomes a superstar that now everybody is after, right? In Montreal, where did Ryan Poehling go? He's a key guy. He's a young centerman with a lot of skill. Haven't seen him in a year and a half. So you look at guys that, are they going to develop? Are they going to become that Sam Girard? Are they going to be just floundering around the minors in 2 years and trying to hold on to a paycheck? Every team, when you look at all these teams that you were talking about and could go either way, the Bostons, the St. Louis, the Vancouver, so much of it rests on a guy going from an average second or third round pick to Braden Point.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. And the last question mark I have, and we can transition to kind of eventually here close things out. Last question mark I have is, if we're talking about that middle of the road could go any way, is Calgary. What do they do? You talk about pivotal years. Is this a pivotal year for them? Do they with Coleman and with Markstrom on a big contract and Gaudreau still in your locker room and all these things, do they put it together and show that they're taking steps? Or are you looking in the 2022 off season? Are you looking at Calgary along with a Vancouver, along with a Boston, along with anybody like that, making some major changes?
Here again, what does Dylan Dubé become a Braden Point type player? Does Matt Tkachuk turn into that 40 goal, 100 penalty minute guy that everybody can't live without? Does Sean Monahan and Gaudreau get their game back in order? Yeah, you know, you've got real talent on defense. Anderson, Tanev, Noah Hannafin. They've got bodies like Zadorov now. Who I don't know. Like there are bubble guys on bubble teams.
Yep.
And when you put it all together, when you are the St. Louis Blues of 2019, your bubble guys become stars. Robert Thomas became a star. Binnington became a star. When that happens, Tampa, remember 3 years ago, got bounced in the first round by Columbus, got swept, came back and won 2 straight cups. Their guys gelled. Their bubble players became stars. All of a sudden, the coach is a lot smarter. All of a sudden, your goaltender is a world beater. So much of it, you know what you're going to get out of your top guys. You know what you're not going to get out of your bottom guys. It's those bubble guys in the middle that make or break teams, and that's what causes teams to decline and retool, or to propel themselves right into the conference finals.
Yep.
And you're right. I mean, Markstrom's a good goaltender. He's a way better goaltender when the team is playing well, when they've got the puck all the time. And Binnington or anybody, pick a guy. It doesn't matter. The goaltender is normally the symptom, not the disease.
Yep, 100%. Transitioning, I guess a lot of question marks for teams this year will be what you see of PTOs in camp. number of PTOs coming in. Jack Johnson, Artem Anisimov in Colorado.
Yeah.
Just to name a couple. Do they play their way into roster spots? You know, who takes the step in camp to keep that from happening?
Right.
Just to use those as examples, you know, does Artem Anisimov come in and take a roster spot away from a Logan O'Connor?
Right. So here's an observation.
Or Jack Johnson coming in and taking a spot away from Bowen Byram or Jacob McDonald. So
yeah, and in a perfect world, neither of those would happen. Johnson would be a depth guy who can play against anyone. He's not got certainly the upside anymore of a guy like Bowen Byram, certainly, but he's somebody that if Byram needs, you know, a couple weeks with an ankle injury, now Johnson is perfectly capable. What you see the elite teams doing, and I'll call them elite even though they've not been, you know, competing for a cup the last few years as they should have been maybe. You take a Toronto, take a Colorado, you take a lot of teams that are, and Tampa will be doing the same thing. Vegas to a lesser degree. Carolina, you've got your core guys. You've got your $8 and $10 million guys everywhere in the lineup. You got them on defense, you got them forward, you got them in goal. Now to fill in that depth, number one, you don't have the cap space to go get anybody, but you're seeing more and more quality NHL everyday kind of guys like Jack Johnson, for example, who's, you know, at the end, he's on the tail end of his career, but great NHL career. He's now fighting to keep a league minimum job. Now you've got waiver wire guys, you've got PTO guys that are trying to hang on to a job, and you need them to do that because you need a guy like Jack Johnson in the press box every night. You need him skating with the Black Aces every day to solidify your defense core, to give it depth and give you some insurance in the case of a broken ankle with a blocked shot or something. A lot of teams are going that way in this stage of the cap, as they have to. So why you see a guy like Spezza playing for the league minimum. You see Luke Shen signing, someplace every year because they need that depth guy for the league mini. So good point. I'm glad you brought that up.
Anything else we want to close on this week for episode 94?
94. No, but I'm going to make sure that I am in studio for 100, one way or another.
We'll find a way to do it. So thanks for joining on Zoom.
Hey,
War Room Hockey Podcast, episode 94 this week. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, War Room the Hockey Podcast, at War Room the Hockey Podcast, respectively. You can find us on Spotify, Apple or Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music. We are also, though there's technical difficulties with it, we are also on iHeartRadio. You can also find us on YouTube. We've been away from YouTube for a little while, but you can find some of our Zoom conversations on YouTube. And
we're on YouTube. I didn't know we were on YouTube.
I told you that. It's not my fault you forget.
I thought the only way you could get on YouTube was like having some kind of a major skateboard crash or something. You mean I made it to YouTube without
your beautiful mug is sitting on YouTube with conversations that we've had with Ryan Walter. So there's a few of those up. So
nice.
But you can find us on YouTube whenever we have Zoom conversations, as we're still trying to sort out the recording and the video aspect when we are in studio together.
You gotta warn me ahead of time so I can look good. I want to look my best if we're going to be on YouTube.
Yeah, well, you can only do so much of that. So
fine, whatever.
But, so you can find us there. Make sure if you are there, we apologize for being away for a few weeks. Again, Zoom is kind of our way of doing it right now when we are on the YouTubes, as the old folks like to say. Subscribe there, notification bell. This one will be up on YouTube as well as the audio on the necessary platforms. And yeah, so thanks for joining on Zoom. Appreciate it.
Great to be here. And, thanks for having me.
Yep. Thanks for everybody for tuning in. If we offended you, then I don't care.
Yeah. Let everybody.
Not sure what you want me to do if we offended you.
Let me.
Sounds like more of a you problem than an us problem. But so
just let everybody have their own opinion. Don't tell everyone what to think. Get a vaccination if you want to. Don't if you don't. It's all good. Like everybody should be entitled to their own freedom, and we'll stand by that regardless. Anyhow, thanks for having me on. It's great.
Absolutely. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see everybody throughout the hockey community. Cheers.
Cheers.